Welcome to PokeClass episode 30. This week is going to follow on my Heart Gold Soul Silver analysis, since the weeks are quickly counting down to the rest of the world's national championships. I'm going to keep the introduction short so I can fit in a nice bit of news we've had this week. A couple of days ago, PokeGym.net released an official statement about our new set, which is set for release in late August. The set is going to be called Black and White Emerging Powers and is set to include over 90 cards that weren't released in the Black and White base set. People are expecting that this will include cards such as Pokemon Catcher and Beartick, which are all set to make a substantial impact on the game upon their release. The set will also feature 2 Full Art Legend cards, Thundurus and Tornadus, along with the traditional 2 theme decks. Along with the release of this set comes the official public release of the Pokemon TCG Online. These new booster packs are reported to feature new codes in every pack, netting you an extra virtual pack online to open. This means that we can all start boarding in our online collection to play against each other through this program with the full release. Hopefully it lives up to the expectations when everyone is using it, but we'll have to wait and see. Also mentioned, along with the release date of August the 31st, PokeBeach.com have predicted that we'll receive the rest of the Black and White cards the Japanese have, mainly the Red collection, just under 2 months after this release. This means that we'll be given a lot of cards to play around with in a short space of time, making for a very exciting 2 months for us. Hopefully we receive some of the cards that are getting all the hype so far, so we can really test their strength in the current format. So that's all the news I have for you this week, so it's on to the main part of the episode. One card has become the heart and engine of many Heart Gold Soul Silver on deck ideas for its incredible ability to attach energy as fast as possible across the whole field. Yes, I'm talking about Emboar from Black and White, or Ability Emboar as it's appropriately nicknamed. Before I go through the main deck this Pokemon could be included in, let's have a look at the card on its own. First off, Emboar is a stage 2 fire type with a pretty big 150 HP, an ability and a single attack. To start with, 150 HP is very nice for its stage 2, making it a long way from being KO'd, but where Emboar shines is its ability. Inferno Fandango allows the player to attach a fire energy to any of their Pokemon on their side of the field, as many times as they like during their turn. This instantly reminds players of Feraligatr Prime, who sports a very similar Pokepower, only featuring water energy onto water Pokemon. This is where Emboar soars above the rest, by being able to attach an energy to any Pokemon on the field, not being restricted to just fire types. This energy acceleration gives Emboar a solid spot in many lists that need to get a fair few energy on the field to get going, and gives these kinds of decks the speed they need to keep up. Since Emboar can attach fire energy to any Pokemon on the field, you're given a ton of options when it comes to building decks around him. Emboar has been the sole part of many decks featured across many websites, and is a highly sought after card at the moment. The rest of this episode is going to go over the most popular deck choice for Emboar. The deck that's the most popular choice for Nationals at the moment is Emboar Magnezone. This deck is currently being slotted straight into Tier 1 and is the deck to beat in the run up to Nationals. The deck features 2 very bulky Stage 2 Pokemon bearing very hard hitting attacks. The idea of the deck is to get Emboar and Magnezone in play as soon as possible and use Emboar's Inferno Fandango to get energy on the field, fueling Magnezone's Lost Burn attack. I'm sure most of you know by now that Magnezone's Lost Burn attack allows you to do 50 damage times the amount of energy you send to the Lost Zone from any of your Pokemon. This attack costs just a lightning and a colourless energy, which is a cinch to set up with Emboar, as well as getting the extra energy on the field to use the attack. Along with Magnezone's attack, it has a very useful Pokepower called Magnetic Draw, which allows you to draw cards up until you have 6 once per turn. This is very helpful towards the speed of the deck, when paired with the Trainer Engine, which I'll mention later. Combining a strong attack with built-in draw power and a constant flow of energy, Magnezone can tot up enough damage to take down even the strongest of Pokemon in a single attack. So now we have the strategy of the deck down, let's build ourselves a list from the ground up. I'm gonna do this a little differently than normal, so comment below if you like it. Rather than just telling you the cards you need to include in the deck, I'm gonna keep a tally going at the side, showing what we've put in and how many you can include. Then hopefully you'll be able to see the deck being built as we go through it, and at the end of the video, we'll have a fairly effective list to work with. So let's start with the Pokemon, and obviously we're going to need a line of Emboar and a line of Magnezone, but what numbers should we use? In my build so far, I've been using 313 of every stage 2 attacker, since it seems to be just enough to get the job done, along with having some space free for techs and optional cards. 313 of both seems to be a nice start, so let's add those in and start off our list. Next up, we're going to need a starter. This format, the baby Pokemon are filling the initial active spot with their ability to attack for free with useful effect, and have 50% chance of invincibility going into your opponent's turn. For this deck, you're going to need to be getting off to a quick start, so I would suggest 3 or 4 Cleffa from Heart Gold Soul Silver or Call of Legends. If you don't know already, Cleffa's Eek attack allows you to shuffle your hand into your deck and draw 6 cards, but then sending Cleffa to sleep. This means that you can get rid of a horrible starting hand or just net a few extra cards for the turn. Something you may want to try is a single copy of Tyrogue from Heart Gold Soul Silver or Call of Legends as well. This card has quickly earned itself anti-Cleffa status since its attack Mischievous Punch can do 30 for 0 energy. This will quickly knock out any non-sleeping Cleffa or any baby Pokemon for that matter. Including a single copy of this can get you a quick start in the game by taking a cheap prize, as well as getting rid of their Cleffa help as soon as possible. I'll put 3 Cleffa and a single Tyrogue in our list for now, but you can change that as you wish. Next, we're going to need some support or techs for our bad matchups, or just some extra attackers to finish the game off. The most popular choice for a backup attacker at the moment is Rayquaza Deoxys Legend, or RDL in its shortened form. You may be wondering why a legend is appearing in a deck, but they're actually much more viable in this format, especially when equipped like this one. Rayquaza Deoxys Legend features a Pokebody called Space Virus and an attack named Ozone Buster. Space Virus is a simple but very powerful Pokebody to have, since it lets you take an extra prize for each KO this legend takes. That means for each KO you take, you're taking 2 prizes instead of 1. This matches incredibly well with its attack, Ozone Buster, since it can do 150 damage, enough to knock out almost any Pokemon. For 2 fire, 1 lightning and a colourless energy, this attack will do 150 damage to the opponent and take 2 prizes in doing so. This makes this card an incredible game finisher, being able to power up in a single turn thanks to Emboar. I've been toying around with the numbers on this in my list, whether it should be 1-1 or 2-2, but I'm currently finding 2-2 to suit me better at the moment, so I'll put that in our list for now, but feel free to change it. 1-1 is still a great choice and opens up more deck space, but can be prized very easily, which puts me off running the thinner line. So now we have most of our Pokemon lines, but when we're done, we should have some space for techs, so I'll go over those near the end. On to trainers now, and we're going to need an engine that really speeds up the deck, since we're dealing with 2 stage 2s here. The engine I would recommend is one that really has worked in a majority of decks at the moment, and features Sage's Training along with Junkarm. These 2 cards have some incredible synergy, since Sage's Training can net you 2 cards from the next 5 of your deck, and Junkarm has the ability to get back what you were made to discard. This gives you a great amount of draw power when paired with Magnezone's Poker Power as well. I would highly recommend running 4 copies of each of these cards, since they seem to just work so well in this deck. When using Junkarm, you won't really need to worry about making your hand close to nothing either, since you can use multiple magnetic draws per turn to get a fresh hand, giving you even more draw power. For these reasons, let's add them into the list, and if you haven't played around with this engine yet, I would highly suggest it in any of the decks you try. It may not work in all of them, but most benefit from it. On to the more staple cards of the deck in the form of Pokemon Collector and Communication. These cards are essential in any deck to get your basics onto the field as soon as possible, along with being able to grab the Pokemon you need with Communication later on. I'll suggest you have 3 or 4 copies in this list, since you're going to need to draw these early on in the game to get your basics ready for evolution as soon as possible. 4 of each is great for this, since you can always discard the extra ones later in the game with Junkarm, but 3 can work too if you're desperate for the extra space. A staple for stage 2 decks is definitely Rare Candy, a pretty self-explanatory card. This card gets you the quick evolutions you need to make sure you can get attacking as soon as possible. Running 4 of these increases your opportunity of drawing it early on, but you can always utilise Junkarm if you just can't seem to draw multiple ones. 4 of these go straight into the list. So those are pretty much the essential parts of the deck, but there are other cards we can fit in which are up to more player choice. First we have Energy Retrieval. This card gets you the energy you need from the discard pile from retreats or KOs so you can reuse them straight away. I personally wouldn't run more than 2 of these in here since you'll be lost zoning most of your energy rather than discarding, and if you need more use of it, the high junk arm count is always there. The next choice is Professor Juniper. This card will speed up your deck a fair bit, but I wouldn't suggest running this as well as Sage's Training. Some people prefer this card with junk arm rather than Sage's, but I just feel that Sage's is the strongest card, since you have more control over what you want to discard rather than getting rid of your whole hand. I'll change this in the list to either Sage's or Juniper, but Sage's Training just seems to work so much better in this deck than the other. Another choice was very popular last format when using Magnezone, and that's Judge. Judge allows you to bring both hands down to 4, use what you need, and then use Magnetic Draw to net you more than your opponent. This is still a very viable strategy in this format, and should be tested to see if it's more or less effective than Sage's, but my personal choice would be Sage's. Aside from that, Judge can still get you what you need, but adds a little more luck to Sage's to pull off effectively, obviously because there's no choice involved. As with Juniper, I wouldn't run any of the 2 together, so try out which one works best for you and stick with it. A usual staple for most decks is Dual Ball, but in this deck it just doesn't seem to cut it. The list is already tight, and I would suggest running more Collector over a flippy card. Don't get me wrong, this card is very useful in pretty much every deck, but with tight room already, it can be easily cut since the deck has a strong source of draw anyway. I've seen lists take out the Sages and Collectors for Dual Ball and Juniper to make it more of a speed kind of deck, which does fairly well, so try out both to get the best for you. Switch is a debatable card to include, since it can be essential, but it's only seemed to be needed in rare situations. Since Pokemon Reversal is going to be a highly played card in this format, Emboar getting stuck active is not what you want at all with no way out. The high junk arm count in the deck really makes use of one-off trainers, since you can discard them early on with Sages and have easy access to them via junk arm when you need them. This means that including just 1 or 2 copies of this card can be justified, so think about putting this in if you find yourself needing them later on. The last card was mentioned just a second ago, Pokemon Reversal. This card seems to be the one that you just can't find room for but really want to. Including this will add a little disruption to your opponent since you can pick off what they're trying to set up to present a counter attack. The only problem is finding room for it in the list. With the optional choices you may be able to fit in 1 or 2, but none higher than that or you'll be sacrificing too much consistency. It's a very nice option to have if you can fit it in, but it's up to player choice what you choose. When it comes to adding techs and variants of Pokemon in this deck, there really isn't much space. If you really feel the need to tech your list, then cutting the legend line down to 1/1 can help you to do this, although you will lose consistency. Your options for techs can be swapping one ability Emboar for the other Emboar from Black and White. The reason for this is because it has a fairly powerful attack called Flare Blitz, which does a massive 150 damage. This is an option for having another late game finisher other than Rayquaza Deoxy's legend. Another option you could use would be Reshiram. Now Reshiram and Emboar are usually used in their own deck, but the option to include it is still there. 120 damage for the discard of just 2 energy is still a really good option to have to get you early KOs since the attack is very easy to set up via Emboar. Adding either of these 2 can give you more firepower, but you may sacrifice some consistency in doing so. So we've got all of those sorted out, and now we need some energy, which is the simplest part of the deck. Lightning and fire are all that are needed, and 13 to 16 seems to be the magic number so far. I would suggest using 4 to 5 lightning and 10 to 11 fire so that you don't run out too quickly, but can still draw into it effectively. This should be a solid amount to deal with, but as ever, you can change these up to what you feel most comfortable with. So now we have our skeleton list for Magnezone Emboar, one of the strongest contenders for the title so far. Hopefully you've learned enough about the deck to either play it yourself or play against it, since there is a strong possibility you'll play against this at Nationals. I'm a great fan of the deck and could see its potential as soon as I started to test with it. If you are one of the players that really want to steer clear of the meta, then make sure your other decks can stand up to this, otherwise you will have a tough time. This episode was going to go over all of Emboar's uses, but the deck has so much to talk about, I'll have to highlight those in another episode or a written piece on my website. keep checking the website and subscribe to the mailing list to get updates of what's coming next. So that's all I have for you this week. I hope you enjoyed the new format for the analysis, and as ever, any questions you have just type them down below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. As for deck surgery, I should have a video up in the next few days, but I'll analyse one on my website today. Check out pokemondan.co.cc to see if it was yours that was chosen. And please keep sending me your deck list if you want some help before Nationals, so I can make a midweek video as well as another written article next week. Thanks for watching, make sure you subscribe and check out my website for daily updates. See you next week.